CreepyCorner stories.
Hey everyone, welcome back to CreepyCorner stories. You know, diving into the dark web is always risky, but sharing these stories with you makes it worth it. I'm curious, where are you watching this from right now? Let me know in the comments below. I've noticed that these kinds of stories hit differently depending on where you are. It might even make the experience a little creepier. So, tell me, are you watching from the safety of your home or somewhere less secure? I found a job on the dark web to work in a hotel, and I've been watching a man on the cameras run on the hotel gym treadmill for hours. Alright, so I know how this sounds. Another, I found a job on the dark web story. Trust me, I wouldn't believe me either, but I need to write this down somewhere because what I saw, what I am still seeing, is seriously messing with my head. I guess I should start with how I got here. I was dead broke. I mean, really broke. Rent was overdue. My car was basically a lawn ornament at this point, and my bank account was so empty, I think my bank actually pitied me. I was desperately looking for anything to make money, and one night, while scrolling through job listings, I stumbled upon a link. No company name, no job description, just a message. Night shift security. Easy work. $1,000 per night. Apply here. It had to be a scam. I mean, no way some random night shift gig was paying that much. But I was desperate. I clicked. The website was weird. No branding. Just a form asking for my name, age, and a single question. Are you comfortable working in high-stress environments? No resume. No background check. Nothing. I clicked yes. Less than a minute later, I got an email. Report to Blackridge Hotel, 11:45 p.m. Use the staff entrance. Do not interact with guests. Instructions will be provided. No address. No contract. Just that. So, I did what any broke idiot would do. I looked up Blackridge Hotel. Nothing. No Google results. No Yelp reviews. Nothing on social media. But then I checked Google Maps, and that's when I found it. An old, massive hotel on the edge of the city, in a part of town people just don't go to. It wasn't closed or abandoned. There were cars outside, lights on in the windows, but there was zero online presence, like it didn't want to be found. By this point, my gut was screaming at me to drop it, but my bank account was screaming louder. 11:45 p.m. The Blackridge Hotel, I Ubered there, and the driver barely slowed down when we got close. You sure about this, man? He asked, eyes flicking to the building. Place gives me the creeps. That should have been my second red flag. The hotel was massive, one of those old-school luxury places with marble pillars and gold accents. But something was off. The front doors were locked, so I went around the side like the email said. Found a steel door labeled staff only. It wasn't locked. Inside, the air was thick, the kind of hotel smell you'd expect, like old carpet and too much cleaning product. But underneath, something else, something metallic. There was a small office near the entrance, and inside was a single desk with a laptop. No one was there. The screen was already on, showing a live security feed of different parts of the hotel. Hallways, stairwells, the lobby, and the gym. A chat window popped up. Your shift has begun. Watch the cameras. Report unusual activity. That was it. No introduction, no one to greet me. Just a chat window, giving me orders. 1:32 a.m. The man on the treadmill. At first, it was boring. A few guests came and went, mostly avoiding each other. The hallways were always empty for some reason. But then, I noticed something weird. The hotel gym had a guy in it. Nothing strange about that, right? Except he'd been running on the treadmill since my shift started. At first, I figured he was just one of those crazy fitness freaks. But an hour passed, then 2, then 3, still running. I zoomed in on the camera feed. He looked normal. Black gym shorts, gray hoodie, nothing weird. Except his face was completely blank. No exhaustion, no strain, nothing. Just running. Same exact pace. I checked the previous night's footage. The gym was empty before my shift. No one came in. But when I checked the live feed again, he was still there. At 3:12 a.m., I broke the only rule I was given. I left the office. I should have stayed in the office. I should have ignored it. But something about that man, the way he ran, the way he didn't slow down or even look tired, was burrowing into my brain like an infection. I had to see him with my own eyes. The hallways were dead silent. The carpet muffled my footsteps, and the air smelled stale, like the vents hadn't been cleaned in years. Every single door I passed was locked. No sounds from inside. No distant hum of TVs or muffled conversations. Just nothing. When I reached the gym, the glass doors were fogged up, condensation thick against the glass. That was the first thing that made my stomach drop. How the hell was it so hot in there? The hotel was freezing. The AC cranked so high that I could see my breath in some hallways. But inside the gym, the air was wet, heavy. I wiped my hand across the glass. My fingers came away damp. And that's when I saw him. He was still running. Same exact pace. Same exact posture. But now, up close, I could see the details the cameras missed. His hoodie was soaked through. Sweat dripped from his face, sliding down his chin in thick, sluggish drops. His arms were stiff at his sides, fingers curled into fists so tight his knuckles were white. But his expression, God, his face, was empty. No exhaustion, no focus, just vacant. I swallowed hard, knocked on the door. He didn't react. I knocked again, harder this time. Nothing. The treadmill screen was dark, like it wasn't even on. And yet, the bell kept moving, his feet hitting it in a perfect rhythm. Too perfect. The exact same impact, over and over, like a metronome. I reached for the door handle, and that's when he stopped. Not gradually, not like someone who was finishing a run. He froze, mid-stride. His left foot was still in the air, his right foot flat on the moving treadmill, but he wasn't moving anymore. The belt slid under him, his body completely still, like time itself had just cut out for a second. And then his head snapped toward me. Not turned, snapped, like something had just yanked his skull sideways. His eyes, oh my God, his eyes were wrong. The sockets were deep, too deep, like someone had hollowed out his skull and shoved his eyeballs further back inside. The pupils were tiny pinpricks, and the veins, so many veins, thick and black, branching out across his skin like ink spreading through water. And then he grinned. Not a normal grin, not an I see you grin, a too wide, too tight smile that split his lips open at the corners. I stumbled back. My hand missed the door handle, and for a split second, I wasn't sure if I was even breathing. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to run, but my body wouldn't move. And then he took a step. The second his foot hit the gym floor, the lights flickered. The air got thicker, the weight of it pressing against my chest, like I was suddenly at the bottom of the ocean. He took another step. My knees buckled. My vision tilted. I reached out, grabbing onto the door frame just to stay upright. Another step, and then he spoke. His mouth didn't move, but the words poured out of him like a voice leaking from a broken speaker. "You're not supposed to be here." The lights shut off, and in the absolute blackness, I heard his breath. Right, next, to my ear. 3:16 a.m., the blackout. I don't remember running. I don't remember making it back to the office. 1 second, I was in that hallway. The next, I was slamming the office door behind me, hands shaking so hard I could barely lock it. The security monitors were flickering, the feeds cutting in and out like a scrambled signal. My heart was jackhammering in my chest, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. And then the chat window popped up. "Why did you leave your post?" I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. They were watching me. Before I could type anything, another message appeared. "Check the hallway." Number. Hell no. I wasn't opening that door. "Check the hallway. Now." My breath caught in my throat. I slowly turned back to the monitors. The hallway outside the office was dark. The cameras were glitching, distorting the image every few seconds. But I could see something just beyond the flickering static. A shape, standing perfectly still. Too tall, too thin, head tilted at a broken angle, watching the door, watching me. The chat window popped up one last time. "Run!" And then every single screen went black. I didn't move. I couldn't. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. My breath caught somewhere between my lungs and my throat. My body was screaming at me to do something, to run, to hide, to pray. But my brain had shut down, like it couldn't process what I was looking at. The figure outside the door was wrong. The security monitors were still black, but the emergency lights in the hallway had kicked in. Those dim, red backup lights that barely illuminated anything. And in that sickly glow, I could see it. Not human. Not anymore. Its head was twisted too far to the side, like its neck had been wrung out. One arm was longer than the other, fingers stretching down past its knees, twitching like it was trying to remember how to use them. Its clothes were still the same, black gym shorts, grey hoodie, but its skin was wrong, too tight, too shiny, like it had been stretched over something else, something bigger. And its eyes, Jesus Christ, its eyes, still buried too deep, still too small in the sockets. But now, they were watching me, unblinking, unmoving. And then, it took a step forward. 3:17 a.m., the thing at the door. I slammed my hand against the office door's deadbolt, making sure it was locked. My entire body was trembling, a cold, electric panic buzzing under my skin. The thing took another step. The light flickered. I pressed myself against the desk, eyes locked onto the small glass window in the door. It was right there. The glass fogged up as it exhaled. I could hear it now, the wet, shuddering breath of something that wasn't supposed to be breathing at all. Then, slowly, carefully, it lifted one hand and knocked. A single tap against the glass, gentle, almost polite. And then another knock, harder this time. Then another, and another. Each knock came louder, faster. The glass shook in the frame, the entire door rattling under the pressure. It wasn't trying to get in. It was playing with me. I reached for the laptop. My fingers were numb, barely responding, but I managed to flip it open. The chat window was still there, but the text was different now. A countdown. 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 4, 0, 0, 1, 1, 3, 0, 0, 1, 1, hour 2. I had 1 minute left. Left for what? The knocking stopped. Silence. I looked up. It was gone. The hallway was empty. The lights were still flickering. The air still too thick, like the walls themselves were breathing. But the figure was nowhere in sight. And then my phone buzzed. A single notification. No app name. No number. Just a message. Do not open the door. 3:18 a.m. The other door opens. I didn't have time to react. A loud, mechanical click echoed through the room, and I spun around just in time to see. The maintenance door swung open. That door had been locked, chained shut. I had checked it myself when my shift started, but now the lock was broken, the heavy metal door yawning open into absolute darkness. Something moved inside, not footsteps, not breathing, something wet, something dragging. I jumped back, barely stopping myself from screaming. My lungs burned, my entire body locking up as the first sound crawled out from that black void. A low, wet squelch, like something shifting inside a rotting carcass. Then, a hand came out. Not the same hand I had seen on the Treadmill man. This one was rotten. The skin was blackened, peeling back in places to reveal thick, glistening meat underneath. The fingers were too long, joints too thin, bending in places that shouldn't have been possible. It gripped the edge of the door, and then another hand reached out, and then a third. Something huge was pulling itself out of the maintenance room, something with too many arms. And then the hallway lights died. A pitch-black darkness swallowed everything, and in that suffocating void, I heard it crawl toward me. 3:19 a.m. The feed comes back. I don't remember hitting the floor. I don't remember scrambling backward until my spine slammed against the desk. But suddenly, the laptop screen flickered back to life. The security feeds were back, and so was the chat window. The countdown had stopped. A new message appeared. Do not move. Do not speak. I didn't. I couldn't. The thing from the maintenance room was in the office now. I felt it. I felt it. The air had changed. The smell was unbearable. Rotten flesh, metal, something foul and old and wet. The sound of its breathing was wrong, like lungs that had been drowned and dried out again. And then a hand brushed against my leg. I bit down on my tongue, so hard I tasted blood. The thing sniffed me. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And then the laptop screen glitched. The security feed for the gym came back, and the Treadmill man was standing in front of the camera now, smiling. His mouth was too wide, too full of teeth. And then he raised his hand and pointed directly at me, and the chat window refreshed. A final message appeared. You're out of time. And then the power went out. The power cut out completely. No dim emergency lights this time. No flickering monitors. Just absolute blackness. And the thing in the room with me. It wasn't moving anymore, but I knew it was still there. I could hear it. A low, wet breathing, like lungs filled with sludge. The soft clicking of too many teeth tapping together. And then the sound of flesh pulling apart, like something unsticking itself from a surface it had fused to. I was frozen, trapped in that tiny security office with whatever had just crawled out of the maintenance room. I had two choices: stay perfectly still or run. 3:21 a.m. The sound of peeling skin. I moved. I didn't mean to. I swear to God, I didn't. But my foot twitched. Just the smallest shift on the dirty linoleum floor. The kind of sound no normal person would ever hear. But the thing in the room heard it. Because the second my foot scraped against the floor, it twitched. Not moved. Twitched. like something reacting to an electric shock, like a corpse being zapped back to life. And then it lurched forward. The sound it made. Oh my God, the sound. It was like muscles tearing, like wet meat hitting a countertop. A sound that shouldn't come from anything living. And then I felt it. A hand wrapped around my ankle. Too many fingers. Too long. And then it pulled. I hit the ground hard, my chin smashing against the tile. White hot pain bursting through my jaw. My teeth clacked together so hard I tasted blood. I tried to kick it off, but it was strong. And then it spoke. A voice that didn't belong to anything human. Where do you think you're going? The words slithered into my ears, but the voice wasn't coming from behind me anymore. It was inside my head. I screamed. 3:22 a.m., crawling through the dark. I don't remember kicking free. I don't remember how I got to my feet. I just remember running, blindly, stumbling, crashing into walls. The air was too thick to breathe. The smell of blood was everywhere. I could feel it on my skin, my clothes, soaking into me. But I kept running. Somewhere in the dark, I heard the gym door slam open. Then, footsteps. Too fast, too heavy. Not just one pair, several. I wasn't alone in the hallway anymore. I didn't know what was chasing me. I just knew that if I stopped running, I wouldn't be me anymore. 3:24 a.m., the elevator. That shouldn't exist. I turned a corner and saw light. A single red glow at the end of the hallway. An elevator. The hotel didn't have an elevator. Not there. I had checked the blueprints on the first night. There were no elevators on this floor. But there it was. The doors wide open. A low ding echoing through the empty hallway. And inside? Nothing but darkness. No buttons. No handrails. Just a black, yawning hole. Like an open mouth waiting to swallow me whole. And then I heard them behind me. The footsteps. The breathing. The wet, shuffling movements of something that shouldn't be able to walk. I had no choice. I ran inside the elevator. The doors slammed shut before I even touched them. 3:25 a.m. The elevator. That went down too far. I expected the sickening drop of a normal elevator. I expected the pull of gravity in my stomach, but I felt nothing. The floor wasn't moving. The walls weren't moving. The doors were gone. I turned around, and I was standing in a hotel hallway I had never seen before. 3:26 a.m. The floor that doesn't exist. The walls were peeling, the wallpaper curling like burned skin. The carpet was soaked, squelching under my shoes with every step. The air smelled like rot, like something had died here a long time ago, and no one had ever cleaned it up. And down the hallway, I saw the treadmill man, standing there, waiting. His head was tilted at that broken angle again, but this time, his arms were longer, his fingers dragging against the walls, leaving behind long black smears of something thick and oily. And his smile was bigger now. His lips ripped open at the edges, exposing rows of two small teeth packed together like a shark's mouth. And then he started running again, not away from me, at me. I turned and ran the other way, but the hallway kept stretching. No matter how far I ran, it never ended. I wasn't getting closer to the end. The doors were melting. The carpet was sticking to my feet like tar, and he was getting closer. 3:30 a.m. The door with my name on it. I saw it. A single door at the end of the hall, and carved into the wood, my name. Not painted, not written, carved. Deep, jagged cuts, like someone had scraped it in with a knife. I threw myself at it, twisting the handle so hard I thought my wrist would snap. The door flew open, and I was back in the security office. 3:31 a.m. The last message. The monitors were back, the power was on, and the chat window was waiting for me. A single message. You were never supposed to leave. I looked at the cameras. The gym was empty. The hallways were normal. No treadmill man. No crawling thing in the maintenance room. Just a normal, quiet hotel at 3:30 in the morning. Like none of it had ever happened. And then, the chat window refreshed one last time. Another message appeared. One that made my stomach drop into my feet. Check the office camera. My blood turned to ice. Because I knew what I was going to see before I even clicked the feed. And when the security office camera popped up, I saw myself sitting at the desk, typing, smiling, and then the version of me in the camera turned to look directly at me and winked. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The thing on the monitor, the one that looked like me, that was sitting in my chair, smiling at the camera, winked at me, and then it stood up. 3:32 a.m. The copy that knows my name. My brain was short-circuiting. This wasn't some glitch, some recording. The figure on the monitor was real. It moved like me, sat like me, but there was something wrong about it. Its posture was too stiff. Its head was tilted just a little too far to the side. And that smile, that wasn't my smile. The camera feed was delayed by a fraction of a second, just enough for me to see myself move before I actually moved, like my reflection had gotten tired of following my lead. And then it raised its hand and waved. I slammed the laptop shut. 3:33 a.m. The wrong reflection. I turned around too fast, my vision tilting. The security office was empty. The chair I was just sitting in was still pulled out, but it was empty. The laptop was still warm, the screens glowing, but I was alone. Or at least, I should have been. The mirrored filing cabinet in the corner, the one I hadn't noticed before, showed something that wasn't me. I was standing in front of the desk, heart hammering, breath coming out in ragged gasps. But in the reflection, I was still sitting in the chair, watching me, smiling. I took a shaky step back. The reflection didn't. It stayed perfectly still. And then, it stood up, but not like a normal person. It rose in one jerky, unnatural motion, like a marionette being yanked up by invisible strings. I stumbled back, my hips slamming into the desk. The reflected version of me didn't blink, didn't breathe. And then, slowly, it tilted its head to the side, and the skin on its face started to split. 3:34 a.m. The thing wearing my skin. A thin, black line cracked down the center of its forehead, splitting its face apart like a rotten pumpkin. But there was no blood, just darkness underneath. Something else was inside my skin. Something that had been wearing me like a costume. And now, it was peeling itself free. The sound it made, oh my God! It was like leather ripping apart, like wet fabric being torn down the middle. The skin slid away, curling back, revealing something black and writhing underneath. And then, the reflection turned its head toward me, even though I wasn't moving, even though my actual body was still standing perfectly still, frozen in terror. The thing in the mirror was still looking at me, and it was laughing, a soft rattling noise, like something choking on air, like it was trying to remember how to sound human. 3:35 a.m. The door that shouldn't open. I backed away, my knees threatening to give out. And then, a knock. Not from the mirror, not from the screens, from the office door. 3 slow, deliberate taps. I spun around. The handle was turning. Something was coming in. I lunged for the door, pressing my entire weight against it, fingers clawing for the deadbolt. But the moment I touched it, the wood started to warp. The doorknob melted into my palm, fusing to my skin. I yanked my hand back, but the door came with it, stretching like chewing gum, twisting into my flesh, dragging me forward. The wood wasn't wood anymore. It was flesh, a pulsing, living thing that had been pretending to be a door. And now it had me. 3:36 a.m., the hallway, that wasn't there, before the door ripped open and I stumbled forward into a place that didn't exist. It wasn't the hotel hallway. It wasn't the lobby. It was somewhere else. The walls were black and breathing. The floor was slick, like it was alive. The air hummed, vibrating through my bones, like I was standing inside a giant living throat. And ahead of me, at the end of the impossible hallway, was the Treadmill man. His head was completely gone now, just a stump, still leaking thick black fluid onto the floor. But his body was still running, still pounding forward on nothing, still going, still going, still going. And then he stopped, mid-stride, like someone had pressed pause on reality. The moment his foot hit the ground, everything went silent. The wall stopped breathing, the air stopped moving, and then the thing that had been wearing my face spoke. You were never supposed to leave. But now, you never will. 3:37 a.m., the last thing I ever saw. The floor collapsed beneath me. I fell through the rotten meat of the walls, fell through darkness so thick it choked me, fell for so long I forgot what the ground even was. And then I woke up, back in the security office. Everything normal, everything fine. The laptop was closed, the monitors were off, and the chat window was gone, like nothing had ever happened. But when I turned to look in the mirror, my reflection was still smiling. And then it winked. Final log, 3:38 a.m. I am not me anymore. I don't know who's writing this, because I don't think it's me. I don't think I ever left the hallway. I don't think I ever got away. I think I'm still falling. And whatever's sitting here, typing this for you to read, it's just wearing me now. And if you're reading this, it's already looking for you next. Our town is infested by unwanted visitors, and all they do is watch us. I found on the dark web. Why? Alright, so before I start, let me just say that I know how this sounds. I wouldn't believe it either if I hadn't seen it myself. But I did. I saw them. And once you notice them, they notice you back. I wish I could go back to when I was just another idiot scrolling TikTok at 2 a.m., watching people do dumb dances and stupid pranks. I'd give anything to go back to that life. But instead, here I am, writing this from a motel room with the windows covered by duct tape and bed sheets. If I disappear after posting this, just know one thing. Whatever you do, don't look too long. I live in a small town in Wisconsin, not like middle of nowhere small, but small enough that you see the same people at Walmart every time you go. We've got the basics: McDonald's, Starbucks, a Target that's just barely staying in business. It's the kind of place where people don't lock their doors because nothing bad ever happens here. At least that's what we thought. It started a few months ago. At first, no one even noticed. A couple of weirdos hanging around isn't exactly news, you know. But then there were more and more. By the time people did notice, these things were everywhere. They looked human, sort of. If you glanced at them real quick, you'd think they were just regular people standing around, waiting for something. But the longer you looked, the more you'd see what was wrong with them. Their eyes were just a little too dark. Their skin was too smooth, like a mannequin trying to pass as real. And the worst part, they never blinked. I remember the first time I really saw one. I was in the Starbucks parking lot, scrolling through Instagram, when I got this weird feeling. You know when you can just feel someone watching you? That crawling sensation on the back of your neck. I looked up. There was a man standing on the sidewalk across the street, staring straight at me. Black hoodie, jeans, normal looking dude, except for his eyes. Way too wide, unmoving, locked onto mine like a camera. I figured he was some crackhead or something, so I just looked away. But when I glanced back, he was still there. Same pose, same stare. I don't know how long I sat there, but after a while, I got freaked out and drove off. I checked my rearview mirror, expecting to see him still standing there, but he was gone. I tried to shake it off. People are weird. Whatever. But then it started happening everywhere. I'd see them at the grocery store, standing perfectly still, in the middle of the aisles. No shopping cart, no movement, just staring. At McDonald's, sitting in booths with no food, watching people eat. Even in my neighborhood, I caught one standing on my front lawn one night, just staring at my house. No phone, no backpack, no reason to be there, just watching. I told my friends, but no one believed me. They laughed it off, said I was paranoid. Even my mom told me to stop watching creepy YouTube videos before bed. So I did what any idiot with anxiety and an internet connection does. I went looking for answers in the worst possible place, the dark web. Now, I'm not talking about the kind of dark web you see in movies where hitmen and drug dealers have websites with big buy now buttons. I'm talking about the real stuff, the kind of forums where people talk in code and you have to dig through layers of nonsense to find anything useful. And after weeks of searching, I found something, a thread on an obscure forum with a title that made my stomach drop. The unblinking ones do not engage. The post was from a user with a string of numbers for a name, and it was just a wall of text with no punctuation. Took me forever to read, but once I did, I almost threw up, because it described exactly what was happening in my town. These things show up in small towns first. They stand and watch. They don't interact. They don't move unless they need to. And then, one by one, people start disappearing. At the bottom of the post, there was a single warning. If you see them, do not acknowledge them. Do not look for too long. And whatever you do, don't let them know you've noticed. My dumbass, of course, had already done all of that. And that's when I realized they weren't just watching random people. They were watching me. I don't know how long I sat in my room that night, rereading that post over and over. My brain kept trying to come up with some rational explanation. Maybe it was just some creepy internet story, just like the ones I love to read. Maybe I was just letting my paranoia get the best of me. But then, at exactly 3:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. No message, no missed call. Just one thing, a photo of me, sitting in my room. From outside my window, I didn't even have time to process it before my phone buzzed again. Another photo. This time, it was my house. Every single window filled with dark, unblinking faces. I dropped my phone so fast, it cracked against the floor. My chest felt like it was collapsing in on itself. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But I knew I couldn't move because they were still out there, watching, waiting. I don't remember falling asleep. I must have passed out from fear because the next thing I knew, sunlight was pouring through my blinds like nothing had happened. My first thought was that maybe it was a dream. Maybe I had just freaked myself out and imagined everything. But then I saw my phone on the floor, and I knew the photos were still there. But now there was something else. A new message. You were never supposed to know. I spent the next day in a daze, barely able to function. I tried to act normal, but every second felt like my last. I couldn't eat. I couldn't focus. Every time I blinked, I swore I could feel eyes on me. And then, something happened that I still can't explain. I was at McDonald's, hoping that being around other people would make me feel safe. I kept my head down, scrolling mindlessly through Twitter, trying to pretend everything was fine. But then, I noticed something. The restaurant was silent. I looked up. Everyone, every single person, was sitting completely still. Not eating, not talking, not even blinking, just staring at me, the cashier, the families, the people behind the counter, even the kid in the play area, frozen in place, his mouth slightly open like someone had pressed pause on reality. I felt like I was underwater, my brain refusing to process what was happening. I stood up so fast, my chair screeched against the floor. And then, all at once, they went back to normal, talking, laughing, eating, like nothing had happened. I stumbled out of there, heart slamming against my ribs. And that's when I realized something even worse. It wasn't just McDonald's. It was the entire town. They were all part of it. I had to get out. I didn't care where. I just needed to leave. I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and sped down the highway as fast as I could. I didn't stop, didn't look back, just kept driving until my gas light came on and I was forced to pull over at some rundown gas station in the middle of nowhere. The cashier gave me a weird look as I fumbled for my card, my hand shaking so bad I could barely hold it. "You okay, man?" he asked. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to beg him to help me, to believe me. But before I could, something on the store's security monitor caught my eye. One of the cameras showed the gas pumps outside. My car was there, and behind it, a row of figures standing perfectly still at the edge of the parking lot, not moving, not blinking, just waiting. I ran. I didn't even grab my change, just bolted out of there, jumped in my car, and peeled out onto the road like my life depended on it. Because I think, deep down, I knew. It did. I drove for hours. I didn't stop until I reached a city I'd never been to, where I checked into the first motel I found. It was a shitty little place off the highway, with flickering neon lights and a front desk guy who barely looked up from his newspaper when I handed him my credit card. But at least I was gone. At least I was safe. Right? At 2:59 a.m., I woke up to the sound of static. My motel TV had turned itself on. The screen was nothing but black and white fuzz, the kind you only see when a channel doesn't exist anymore. But then, through the static, something started to take shape. A video of me, sleeping in my motel bed, from inside the room. And then something moved in the darkness behind me. The screen went black, and in the silence that followed, I heard it. A breath, not mine, right behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to move, to run, but I just sat there, paralyzed, staring at the dead TV screen, my own reflection barely visible in the glass, my breath shallow. The room was silent, except for the sound of the old AC unit humming in the corner. And then, the bed sank behind me, like someone had just sat down. I swear to God, I felt it. The shift in the mattress, the subtle creak of the bed frame. My entire body went ice cold. I clenched my fists so hard, my nails dug into my palms. Slowly, painfully, I turned my head just enough to see. Nothing. The room was empty, but I wasn't alone. I could feel it. Something was here. Something I couldn't see. I forced myself to move, to do something, but the second I lifted my phone to turn on the flashlight, a hand grabbed my wrist. Not rough, not aggressive, just firm, like a warning. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just sat there, my skin crawling as I felt the invisible grip tighten, cold and unnatural, like it wasn't flesh, but something else entirely. Something that wasn't supposed to exist. And then, ever so slowly, it let go. I stood up so fast, I almost fell over. My heart was hammering against my ribs, my body drenched in cold sweat. I fumbled for my bag, yanked open the door, and ran. I didn't stop running until I was back in my car, speeding down the empty highway, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I just needed to get away. I drove until the sun came up, until the streetlights flickered off, and the world felt normal again. My gas tank was almost empty, so I pulled into a random rest stop, one of those run-down places with vending machines that haven't been restocked since the 90s. I splashed cold water on my face in the bathroom, trying to calm down. My reflection looked wrong, like I wasn't even seeing myself anymore. My skin was pale, my eyes sunken, like I'd aged 10 years overnight. And then, something caught my eye. The graffiti on the mirror. It wasn't the usual stuff. No random phone numbers or dumb jokes. Just 5 words, scratched deep into the glass. They see you. They wait. My stomach dropped. I turned and practically ran out of there, back to my car. But just as I reached the door, I saw them, standing at the edge of the parking lot. A dozen of them, maybe more, all identical. Same black hoodies, same wide staring eyes, same expressionless faces, not moving, not blinking, not breathing, just watching. I yanked open my car door, but before I could get in, they moved, all at once, towards me, not running, not walking, just a sudden jerky lurch forward, like a glitch in reality. I screamed. I don't even remember getting into the car, just the feeling of pure, mind-numbing terror as I slammed the door shut and locked it. And then, as quickly as they'd moved, they stopped, frozen, 10 feet away, their faces inches from the glass. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except sit there, shaking, as their dark, empty eyes bore into me. And then, one of them, the closest one, opened his mouth, wider than any human should be able to, and he screamed. Not a normal scream, not even something an animal would make. It was a sound that shouldn't exist, like metal scraping against bone, like 1,000 voices shrieking at once. The windows shattered. I don't remember driving away. I don't remember how I made it out of there alive. I just remember that sound, That inhuman, impossible sound, and the feeling that, no matter where I went, they would follow. I don't know how long I've been running. Days, weeks, maybe longer. Time doesn't feel real anymore. I can't go back to my town. I can't go anywhere. No matter how far I drive, how many states I cross, how many motel rooms I sleep in, with the doors barricaded, they always find me. And every time, there are more of them. I tried to tell someone. Once. Some guy at a diner who noticed how paranoid I looked. I spilled everything, told him about the staring people, the photos, the thing in my motel room. You know what he did? He just smiled. And then he stopped blinking. I ran out of there so fast I almost left my wallet behind. That was the last time I tried to talk to anyone, because now I know it's spreading, and I think I'm the reason why. I don't sleep anymore. Every time I close my eyes, I feel them, standing outside my window, watching, waiting. They don't need to hide anymore, because now they know that I know, and I don't think they're going to let me go. Not this time. Not ever. I don't know what's real anymore. I don't know how long I've been running. I don't even know if I'm still alive. But I know one thing. They won't let me leave. Not the town. Not the country. Not this world. Because this isn't about escape anymore. This is about something much worse. The last time I tried to run, I made it all the way to Canada. I don't even remember crossing the border. Just long, empty highways, gas stations that never had anyone working inside, vending machines full of snacks that expired years ago. Everything felt wrong, like I wasn't driving through the real world anymore, like I had slipped into a version of reality that had been abandoned. I kept the radio off. The last time I turned it on, there was no music, no voices, just static, except for one time. One time, through the static, I swear I heard my own voice, screaming. I turned it off and never touched it again. I don't know what part of Canada I ended up in, but it was cold. The roads were empty, the sky so dark it felt like it was crushing me. I checked into some no-name motel and locked myself in. Barricaded the door with the dresser, closed the curtains, and for the first time in weeks, I felt alone. No shadowed figures standing in the parking lot, no mannequins frozen outside my window, no wide, unblinking eyes watching from the darkness. Just me. I should have known it wouldn't last. At exactly 3 a.m., the TV turned itself on. No static this time, just footage of me, sitting on the bed, right there, right now. Only, it wasn't a recording, because in the video, I wasn't alone. There was something behind me, tall, thin, its skin stretched too tightly over its face, like it had been stitched onto a skull that wasn't meant to wear it. The eyes were missing. Just hollow, black voids that seemed to pulse when I looked at them. And its mouth was open, wide, too wide. A black hole, stretching down into nothingness. And worst of all, I could hear breathing, not from the TV, from behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I just stared at the screen, frozen, as the thing moved closer. In the video, its skeletal hand reached out, fingers too long, stretching toward my shoulder, and as soon as it touched me, the TV shut off. Silence. I sat there, gripping the sheets, every muscle in my body screaming. I knew, without a doubt, that if I turned around, it would still be there. So I didn't. I waited until the sun rose, until light crept through the curtains, dissolving the shadows in the room. And then I ran. Again. But this time, they didn't chase me. This time, they let me go. And that's how I knew. They had something worse planned. I started noticing it not long after. Reality glitching. Things that shouldn't happen, happening. I stopped seeing them standing outside my window. Stopped spotting their blank, frozen faces in crowds. But other things changed. Reflections in mirrors that didn't match my movements. Voices whispering my name from inside walls. People looking at me like they recognized me. Like they knew what was coming. And then, one night, I got the email. No subject, no sender, just a single message. Are you ready to see? Attached was a video. I should have deleted it. Should have thrown my laptop into a river and forgotten I ever saw it. But I didn't. I clicked. And what I saw, I can't even explain. Because it wasn't footage. It was me. Not now. Not in the past. It was me in the future. Sitting in a room I'd never seen before. Dark. Cold. A single metal chair bolted to the floor. My wrists were tied to it, with thick, rusted chains. My head hung forward, chin touching my chest, as if I were asleep. But I wasn't. I was dead. And then, I lifted my head, my own face staring back at me through the screen, and I smiled. Not like me. Not like a human being. Like something else was wearing my skin. And then, as I watched, the future version of me opened his mouth, and from the darkness inside, they came pouring out. I slammed the laptop shut, threw it against the wall, but it didn't matter, because now I understood. This was never about them chasing me, never about them trying to stop me from escaping. This was about becoming. They don't kill you, they replace you. And I think it's almost my turn. I don't know how much time I have left. Maybe none at all. Maybe, as you're reading this, I'm already gone. Or maybe I'm the one who sent this to you. Maybe it's already too late. I destroyed my laptop, smashed it into 1,000 pieces, but it didn't matter. The video was still playing, not on a screen, not on a phone, in my head. Over and over, the same thing. My own body, my own dead body, sitting in that chair, staring at me through the screen, and the thing inside it, smiling, like it was waiting for me to understand. And I did. Oh, I did. I stopped running after that, because there was nowhere left to run, nowhere left to hide. They weren't chasing me anymore. They didn't need to, because I was becoming one of them. And the worst part, I could feel it, the change. It started small, a twitch in my fingers, a numbness in my lips when I tried to speak. Then, the blinking, or rather, the lack of it. I didn't even notice at first, but after a while, my eyes stopped watering, stopped stinging. I went hours without blinking, then days. Then, one night, I looked into the mirror, and I watched myself forget how. I tried. I really did. I stood there, staring into my own reflection, willing my eyelids to close, but they just wouldn't. Like my body had decided it didn't need to anymore. Like it wasn't mine anymore. I didn't sleep after that. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I wasn't alone inside my own head. There was something else in there. Something watching. Something waiting. And then, the final sign. The proof that I wasn't me anymore. I was in another motel. Don't ask me where. I don't know. They all blur together now. Same cigarette-stained wallpaper. Same flickering lights. Same emptiness. But this one was different. Because when I walked into the bathroom and looked into the mirror, my reflection wasn't moving. I blinked. It didn't. I tilted my head. It stayed perfectly still. Then, it smiled. A slow, painful, unnatural smile. like something learning how to move a face that didn't belong to it. And then, without opening its mouth, it spoke. "You're almost ready." The voice wasn't mine. It wasn't even human. And that's when I finally understood. I wasn't escaping them. I never was, because they were inside me now. And soon, there wouldn't be anything left of me. I don't know how much longer I lasted. Days, maybe weeks. But eventually, I stopped fighting, because it was easier that way. And besides, I wasn't scared anymore. Not really, because by then, I was already one of them. The last memory I have of my old self is sitting on the side of a deserted road, watching the sunrise. It was beautiful. The last beautiful thing I would ever see. Because after that, I stopped seeing things the way humans do. The colors faded, the sounds dulled, and then, at last, I stopped blinking. Forever. I don't remember what happened after that, but I know where I woke up. In that room, the one from the video. The dark, empty place with a chair bolted to the floor. Only now, I was the one sitting in it, and I could feel them, standing around me in the darkness, watching, waiting. I tried to move, but my body wasn't mine anymore. My fingers twitched, my head lolled forward, but none of it was me, because I was already gone. Or maybe I had never existed at all. I don't know who's writing this. Maybe it's still me, some lost, desperate piece of who I used to be. Or maybe it's not me at all. Maybe this is just another part of the plan. Maybe this is how they spread. Maybe by reading this, you're letting them see you. Maybe now, they're watching you too. And maybe, just maybe, you're next. I'm a dark web psychologist. I dared my client to be happy. Now I am paying the price. Alright, so before I start, let me just say, this is not some made-up spooky campfire story. This is real, and I have no idea what to do anymore. If you're reading this, take it as a warning. Some things on the internet aren't meant to be messed with. For context, I'm a licensed therapist. Nothing fancy, just your average guy who studied psychology, got a degree, and started working with patients. You know, depression, anxiety, the usual. But life is expensive, and therapists don't get paid as much as you'd think. So a few years ago, I started taking unconventional clients on the side. I found a little corner of the deep web where people offer private, anonymous therapy sessions. No questions asked. Most of the time, it was just lonely people, too paranoid to talk to a normal therapist. Hackers, criminals, even just rich weirdos who wanted a therapist but didn't want their names in some database. It was shady, yeah, but the money was insane. I mean, $500 per session, insane. Then, about 3 months ago, I got a new client request. It was simple, just a message with a subject line. I need help being happy. That's it. No introduction, no details, just that one sentence. I didn't think much of it at first. Probably just some depressed dude with money to burn. So I responded, set up a session, and sent over my rates. A few days later, the session started. I logged into my encrypted chat room and saw the username 0xHOLLOW has joined the session. We always used aliases. It was part of the whole anonymity thing. I typed my usual greeting. Me. Hey there, what should I call you? No response, just silence. I waited, nothing. Finally, after like 5 minutes, a single message popped up. 0xHollow. I can't feel happiness. Alright, not the weirdest start. I've had a lot of clients say something similar. I kept it professional. Me. I understand. Can you tell me a little more? 0XHOLLOW. I've tried everything. Normal therapy, medication, even other things. That made me pause. Other things could mean a lot. Drugs, meditation, self-harm. I didn't push. Me. And nothing has worked? 0XHOLLOW. No. So now I need a challenge. Me. A challenge? 0XHOLLOW. I want you to make me feel happy, no matter what it takes. At this point, I was still treating it like a normal session. I figured it was just some guy who wanted an intense therapy experience. So, I went along with it. Me. Happiness isn't something you achieve. It's a process, a combination of meaningful experiences, relationships, and 0x hollow. No, not philosophy. A real challenge. I want you to dare me to be happy. Now that was weird. Most clients want solutions, not dares. But hey, I've heard stranger things. So I played along. Me. Alright, I dare you to try something new. Something small, like eating a new food or listening to a new song. 0XHOLLOW. Boring. Try again. Okay, I upped the ante. Me. Fine. I dare you to go outside and do something you've never done before. 0XHOLLOW. Closer. The session went on like that for an hour. Every time I gave him a dare, he shot it down. He wanted more. Something riskier. Something real. Finally, out of frustration, I just typed, me. Alright, I dare you to make someone else happy. I figured that was a safe challenge. You know, a little reverse psychology. Maybe he'd do some charity work or something. There was a long pause. Then finally, 0x hollow. That's an interesting idea. Then he left the session. I didn't think much of it at the time. Just another weird client. But 2 weeks later, I realized I'd made a huge mistake. Because people started dying. A week after my last session with 0XHOLLOW, I got a news alert on my phone. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Just another tragic crime in a world full of them. But then I saw the details. A 23-year-old man found dead in his apartment in Chicago. Nothing too strange about that, until I saw the manner of death. His face was carved into a smile, not just cut, carved, like someone had taken a knife and peeled back the skin from the corners of his mouth, dragging it up to his ears. The police said it looked surgical, precise, too clean to be random violence. And then, the part that made my stomach drop. On the wall, written in blood, was a single phrase. Are you happy now? I stared at the screen, heart pounding. It had to be a coincidence. There was no way it was connected to my session with 0XHOLLOW, right? I tried to forget about it. I really did. I convinced myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. Until it happened again. 3 days later, another new story. New York City. A woman in her 30s found in a Starbucks bathroom. Same M.O. Her face carved into a permanent grin. Same message on the wall. Are you happy now? This time, my hands were shaking as I scrolled through the article. The police had nothing. No fingerprints. No security footage. No forced entry. The victim's belongings were untouched. It wasn't a robbery. It wasn't a random attack. It was deliberate. And I knew this had something to do with 0x hollow. But what the hell was I supposed to do? Walk into a police station and say, hey, I think one of my deep web clients might be carving people's faces open because I dared him to feel happiness. Yeah, that would go over well. I spent the next few days trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was just some psycho who saw the news and copied it. Maybe it was just an urban legend spreading online, and the media was eating it up. Then I got a new email from 0x Hollow. Subject, it's working. I sat there just staring at my screen. My body went cold. I didn't want to open it. Every instinct in my body told me that whatever was inside that email, I wasn't going to like it. But I clicked anyway. It was short. Just 2 sentences. I finally felt it. The rush. The happiness. I owe you for that. Attached to the email was a photo. I hesitated before opening it, my finger hovering over the trackpad. My breathing was shallow. I already knew what I was about to see. And I was right. The image was horrific. A close-up of the latest victim, the lifeless eyes staring into the camera, their face still twisted into that grotesque, forced smile. Blood soaked their clothes, pooling beneath them. The cuts were deep, precise, like someone had practiced. I felt bile rise in my throat. My hands clenched into fists. This was real. This wasn't just some sick game. I had created a monster. I slammed my laptop shut and sat there in the dark, heart racing. What the fuck was I supposed to do? I needed to cut contact. That was my first thought. Delete my deep web accounts, wipe everything, pretend this never happened. Maybe if I ignored him, he'd stop. But before I could even move, my laptop dinged again. Another email from 0xHOLLOW. Subject, don't ignore me. My chest tightened. I clicked on it with shaking hands. You gave me purpose. I can't let you disappear. We're in this together now. I felt sick. Then, at the very bottom of the email, a single line that nearly made me piss myself. Look outside. I froze. Number. No way. Slowly, so slowly, I turned my head toward my window. At first, I didn't see anything. Just the usual street outside my apartment. Cars, streetlights, the dark outline of buildings. But then my eyes adjusted, and I saw him. A tall figure, standing on the sidewalk across the street, just barely illuminated by the streetlight. Still, motionless, watching me. I don't know how long I stared. My body refused to move. My breath felt stuck in my throat. Then, he raised his hand and waved. I couldn't move. I wanted to. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to run, to shut the curtains, to call the cops. Something. But I just sat there, frozen, staring at the man on the sidewalk. He wasn't just some shadow in the night. I could see him, tall, skinny. His face was obscured by the streetlight's glare, but his posture was unnerving, too stiff, like a mannequin dressed in human skin. And then there was his hand, that slow, deliberate wave, like he was mocking me. I wanted to believe it was some sick prank, that maybe my mind was just playing tricks on me after the email. But then my laptop dinged again. Another email from 0xHOLLOW. Subject, you see me. I felt my stomach drop. My fingers trembled as I clicked it open. I knew you'd look. That's why I stood here for exactly 42 minutes. I watched you eat. I watched you read. I watched you check your phone. It's fascinating, really, how unaware people are when they think they're alone. But you're not alone, are you? I stopped breathing. 42 minutes. That meant he had been out there long before I even saw the first email. I couldn't take it anymore. I shot up from my chair, my pulse hammering in my ears, and bolted toward the window. My hand slammed the curtains shut, my breaths ragged and uneven. I stumbled back, feeling like the walls of my apartment were closing in. The silence was unbearable. My own heartbeat sounded like a drum in my ears. Then, knock. My entire body locked up. It wasn't from the front door. It was from my window. I almost didn't turn around. I didn't want to see, but my body betrayed me, my head snapping toward the sound on pure instinct. The curtains were still shut, but behind them, pressed against the fabric, I could see the outline of a hand. Long fingers, perfectly still, resting lightly against the glass. I stopped thinking. I just acted. I ran, bolted out of my apartment so fast I nearly tripped over myself. I didn't even bother locking the door. I just needed to get away. I sprinted down the hall, down the stairs, out onto the street, panting, heart racing, my vision blurred with panic. I turned instinctively toward where the man had been standing. He was gone. The sidewalk was empty, no sign of anyone. But that didn't make me feel better. It made it worse, because that meant he was inside, the missing time. I don't remember much after that. I know I ran. I know I got into my car, hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. I know I drove, somewhere, anywhere, until I was far enough away that I felt like I could breathe again. I ended up at a McDonald's on the edge of town. I sat in the parking lot, trying to convince myself that this wasn't happening, that I wasn't being hunted by a maniac I met on the dark web. Then, at some point, my exhaustion caught up with me. I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, it was 3:47 a.m. My phone was buzzing. I grabbed it with a jolt, my entire body stiff from passing out in the driver's seat. 20 missed calls, no caller ID. My hands were clammy as I stared at the screen. Then, right as I was about to put the phone down, ding, a text message. Unknown number. You shouldn't have run. I stopped breathing. Then another. Unknown number. Come home. I threw my phone onto the passenger seat like it had burned me. My mind was racing. How did he get my number? I never gave it to him. Everything was supposed to be anonymous. Even my email was encrypted. How did he? My thoughts cut off as something caught my eye in the rearview mirror. There was a car parked at the far end of the lot. Black. Windows tinted too dark to see inside. No headlights. But it was running. And the second I looked at it, the engine cut off. I felt like I was going to be sick. My instincts screamed at me to drive. Now. But before I could move, my phone buzzed again. Unknown. Number. We're not done yet. And then, a photo attachment. I didn't want to open it. I knew I shouldn't. But my hands were moving on their own, shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. When the image loaded, my vision blurred with terror. It was my apartment. But it wasn't taken from the outside. It was taken from inside my bedroom. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white. Then the phone buzzed, one last time. No number. Come home, or I'll make you smile too. I hit the gas. The homecoming. I didn't go home. Obviously. I drove as far as I could, heading toward the next city over. I booked a shitty motel under a fake name and locked myself in the room. I didn't sleep. I just sat there, phone off, curtains drawn, trying to figure out what the fuck to do. I considered going to the police, but what was I going to tell them? That I had hired a deep web client who turned into a serial killer. That I had challenged a psychopath to feel happiness, and now he was carving people's faces into smiles. Yeah, that would go over real well. I was trapped. For the next few days, I stayed in that motel, jumping at every sound, barely eating, barely moving. I didn't check my email, didn't turn my phone on. I tried to disappear, and for a little while, it worked, until the TV in the motel lobby played another news report, another murder. This time, it was a teenager. a 16-year-old girl found in her bedroom, the same grotesque smile carved into her face. But that's not what made my blood run cold. The message on the wall was different this time. He won't answer me. I nearly collapsed right there in the motel lobby. It was a message for me. 0x Hollow was escalating, and it was my fault. I ran back to my room, locked the door, and turned my phone back on. It buzzed instantly. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of unread emails, and then the most recent one. From 0xHOLLOW. Subject: we need to talk. You can't ignore me forever. I know where you are. I know where you'll go next. I know everything about you. You made me happy. That means we're connected now, and you don't get to leave me behind. Answer me, or I'll make you watch the next one. I slammed my laptop shut. This wasn't just about me anymore. If I didn't stop him, more people were going to die. I should have answered him. I realize that now. Maybe if I had, things wouldn't have gone the way they did. Maybe if I had just played along, just humored him, she wouldn't have had to die like that. But I ignored him, and he made me watch. For the next 48 hours, I did nothing but sit in that filthy motel room, my mind unraveling. I barely ate. I barely breathed. I just kept refreshing the news, waiting for the next body to show up. But nothing happened. No new articles, no messages, no emails. It was like 0x Hollow had disappeared. For a second, I actually hoped, that maybe it was over. Maybe he got bored. Maybe he moved on. Then, at exactly 3 a.m., my laptop screen flickered. A new email. From 0xHOLLOW. Subject: I want you to see. I just stared at it, my hands trembling above the keyboard. I didn't want to open it. I knew it was going to be bad, but I clicked it anyway. Inside was a single link, a live stream, the feed. I hesitated. Every part of me screamed, "Don't click it." But my curiosity was stronger than my fear. I needed to know. So I clicked. The screen went black for a moment. Then the feed flickered to life. A girl was sitting in a chair, bound, duct tape over her mouth. She couldn't have been older than 20. Blonde, blue eyes wide with terror, face streaked with dried tears. Her body shook violently as she struggled against the ropes, digging into her wrists. I felt like I was going to throw up. Then the camera moved, and he stepped into frame. 0x Hollow. I still couldn't see his face. He was wearing a mask this time, a cheap white plastic thing, the kind you'd find in a Halloween store. But what unsettled me most was how calm he was. He wasn't excited. He wasn't nervous. He was just there, like this was routine, like he had done this before. Then he turned toward the camera, tilted his head slightly, and spoke. I was going to let this one go. His voice was modulated, deep and robotic. But you don't answer your emails. The girl screamed against the duct tape, thrashing so hard the chair rocked beneath her. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to turn it off, but my hands were locked in place, fingers clenched around the laptop, frozen. Then he pulled something from his pocket. A knife. Long, curved, almost surgical. My chest tightened as I realized what he was about to do. I lurched forward, trying to type something in the chat, some desperate plea to stop him. But before I could, he grabbed the girl's face. His fingers dug into her skin as she kicked and thrashed, her muffled screams growing frantic. I watched, helpless, as he brought the knife to her cheek and slowly dragged it upward. I will never, never forget the sound she made, that raw, animalistic wail of pain as the blade split her skin, as the flesh peeled back, tearing into a grotesque, forced grin. She was still alive as he did it, still moving, still screaming. The blood poured down her chin in thick, dark ribbons, dripping onto her lap. Her body convulsed so violently that the chair nearly tipped over. I couldn't do anything. I just sat there and watched. Then, after what felt like a lifetime, the knife stopped. She was still breathing. Barely. Xerox Hollow tilted his head, examining his work like a painter admiring a finished canvas. Then, almost casually, he took the blade, still slick with her blood, and slashed her throat. I choked back a scream. The girl made a wet, gurgling noise as her body twitched, blood gushing from the gaping wound in her neck. Her eyes rolled back. Her chest rose and fell in rapid, shallow bursts, then stilled. A horrible silence filled the room. Then XHOLLLOW turned back to the camera and spoke to me. "Are you happy now?" Then the stream ended, the aftermath. I snapped my laptop shut and vomited. I don't even remember reaching the bathroom. I just remember my knees hitting the tile, my entire body convulsing as my stomach emptied itself. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I wanted to wake up and realize this was all just some horrible nightmare. But I couldn't, because it was real. She was dead, and it was my fault. I was shaking so badly I could barely stand. I needed to do something, anything, so I fumbled for my phone, my fingers clumsily dialing 911. It rang, and then, click. A voice answered, but it wasn't a dispatcher. It was him. 0X Hollow. "That was rude," he said, his voice flat. "I went through all that effort, and you didn't even say thank you." I threw the phone across the room. This wasn't just a game anymore. This was war. I couldn't run. I couldn't hide. He would always find me. There was only one way this was going to end. One of us had to die. I stopped running. It took me too long to realize it, but there was no escaping him, no hiding, no changing my name, no moving to another city, no crawling into some dark hole and pretending he didn't exist. 0X Hollow had already won. The moment I dared him to be happy, I had sealed my fate. And now, I had two choices: die like the others, or face him. The invitation. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. My body ran on pure adrenaline, my mind looping the murder over and over again like a broken record. I could still hear her screams, still see her wide, horrified eyes, still smell the thick, metallic scent of blood soaking the floor beneath her. She had a name. I learned that later. Eleanor Carter. She was a college student, 21 years old, wanted to be a teacher. Her friends said she was always smiling. Now, that smile was carved into her face forever, and it was because of me. I had to end this. I didn't know how. I didn't even know where to start. But then, he made the first move. At exactly 2:06 a.m., my laptop screen flickered again. A new email from 0XHOLLOW. Subject: "Let's finish this." I felt my heartbeat in my throat. My hands hovered over the keyboard, my pulse pounding in my ears. I clicked. Inside was an address. Nothing else. Just a place in the middle of nowhere. An abandoned amusement park about 3 hours away. Underneath, a single line of text: "Come see me. Let's smile together." The amusement park, the drive, was hell. Every second felt like a countdown to my own execution. But I didn't turn around. I didn't hesitate. I knew this was my only chance. I reached the park just before sunrise. It was exactly as I imagined. Rusted rides, collapsed tents, the skeletal remains of a Ferris wheel looming over the broken asphalt. It looked like something out of a horror movie. I stepped out of the car, gripping the gun I had bought from a shady dealer the night before. My hands were clammy, my breath uneven. Then, from somewhere deep inside the park, laughter. It echoed through the empty lot, low and distorted, twisting through the cold air like a razor dragging against my skin. I turned toward the sound, heart hammering. My fingers tightened around the gun. Then, a light flickered on, a single bulb buzzing weakly above the entrance to a funhouse, and standing just beneath it, him, 0x Hollow. He was taller than I expected, lean but not weak. He wore the same blank plastic mask from the live stream, but this time he had changed into something new. A clown costume, not the kind you see at kids' parties. Number this one was filthy, the once bright fabric stained with something dark and crusted. The colors were faded, the material torn in places, and yet he stood there, completely still, like he was waiting. Then he lifted a hand and gestured for me to come inside. The final game. I should have shot him. I should have just pulled the trigger right then and there. But instead, I followed him into the funhouse, into hell. Inside, everything was wrong. The air was thick with the smell of rotting meat. The mirrors lining the walls were smeared with blood, some of them shattered, jagged shards littering the floor. And then, the bodies. Not whole ones. Pieces. An arm here, a leg there, a severed hand dangling from the ceiling like a grotesque party decoration. The funhouse had become his gallery. I felt my stomach lurch, bile burning the back of my throat. But I kept walking, kept moving forward, deeper into the nightmare, until I reached the center and saw her, tied to a chair, duct tape over her mouth. My sister, the smile that never ends. I don't remember screaming, but I must have, because 0x Hollow laughed, a high, distorted giggle that made my skin crawl. I lifted the gun, my hands shaking so violently I could barely aim. Let her go. He cocked his head. Why? My breath came in short, ragged gasps. My entire body trembled. This is between you and me. His shoulders shook. More laughter. No, no, no. You still don't get it, do you? Then, before I could react, he pulled out a knife and stabbed her. The world went red. I screamed so hard my throat ripped open. My ears rang. My body moved on instinct, fingers squeezing the trigger. Bang! The shot hit him in the chest. He staggered backward, a wet, gurgling sound escaping his lips. His hands clutched the wound, blood seeping through his fingers. I ran to my sister, ripping the tape from her mouth, hands fumbling with the ropes. She was alive. Barely. Stay with me. Stay with me. My voice broke as I worked to free her. Then, behind me, laughter. I turned. 0x Hollow was still standing. Blood poured from the wound, staining the clown suit, but his body shook with laughter. That was fun, he whispered. Then, he slammed the knife into his own throat. I watched, paralyzed, as he grinned through the blood. His body convulsed, the knife still buried deep in his flesh, but that horrible, twisted smile never left his lips. Then he collapsed, and the funhouse went silent. Epilogue. The police never found his real name. The bodies? They counted at least 12, but they think there were more. They called him the Smiling Man. I called him my worst mistake. My sister survived. She doesn't talk about it. We don't talk about it. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I still hear his voice, still see his grinning mask lurking in the corners of my mind. And worst of all, I still wonder if he won. Because when I think about that night, I don't feel fear. I feel something else, something worse, a smile creeping up my lips. And for the first time, I wonder, is this what happiness feels like? I bought dog from the dark web. He spoke to me, and I need to find a way how to protect him. I should have never gone looking for it. I should have never opened that damn page. And I definitely should have never clicked buy. Now I can't sleep. I can't eat. Every time I close my eyes, I see them. Those eyes, blank, white, watching me. Not in the way a dog looks at its owner. Not with love or curiosity. With something else. Something human. Let me start from the beginning. It was 3 a.m. when I first stumbled onto Noctisnet. You ever heard those stories about people buying organs, hitmen, or even human slaves off the dark web? Most of that is bullshit. But this place, this was different. It didn't look like a forum, not even a shady marketplace. It looked official, clean, minimalist, like something a government agency would use. I wasn't there looking for anything serious. I was just bored, clicking through random listings, reading through insane product descriptions. At first, it was what you'd expect. Fake passports, stolen identities, black market medication. Then I saw it. A section called Unusual Pets. There was no reason for me to click it, but my hand moved before I could stop myself. The listings were wrong. Bioengineered nightmare. Obedient but unpredictable. $60,000. Reanimated husky. Do not expose to sunlight. $80,000. Specimen 13. Reads at a human level. Binds for life. $2,500. That last one. That's the one that got me. There was only one photo. A single, grainy image of what looked like a black Labrador sitting on a concrete floor. But the eyes. God, the eyes. No pupils. No shine. Just pure white. The description was short. Highly intelligent. May exhibit unusual behavior. Requires a dedicated owner. Do not attempt resell. That was it. No background. No seller name. Nothing. I don't know what the hell came over me, but before I could talk myself out of it, I clicked buy now. The second I confirmed the purchase, my screen glitched. The entire site blinked, then vanished. The whole marketplace, just gone, like it was never there. My heart was pounding. What the hell did I just do? Then my phone buzzed. Order confirmed. Await delivery. That was it. No tracking number. No estimated arrival. Just those 2 words. I sat there, staring at my screen, feeling like I just did something irreversible. I had no idea how right I was. 3 days later, it arrived. It was 2:17 a.m. when I heard the knock. Not a normal knock. Slow. Perfectly spaced. Like someone following a script. I checked my phone. No delivery notification. No messages. My stomach dropped. I crept to the door, checking the peephole. Nothing. Then my phone buzzed. Package delivered. I slowly cracked the door open, and there it was. A massive dog crate, sitting in my hallway. No delivery truck. No footsteps. No sound at all. The crate was wrapped in thick, rusted chains, secured with a single padlock, and taped to the top was a small, white note. It read, "Do not speak to him." I should have closed the door. I should have walked away. But I didn't. I grabbed some bolt cutters from my closet, snapped the lock, and pulled the door open. The smell hit me first. Wet fur. Rot. Copper. Then I saw him, curled up in the back of the crate, motionless. A black Labrador. His fur was greasy, too dark, like it absorbed the light around it. His ribs pressed against his skin, stomach caved in like he hadn't eaten in weeks. And then he moved. He lifted his head, staring straight at me with those horrible pupilless eyes. I swear to God, at that moment, I felt something shift in the room, like the air got heavier. He didn't blink, didn't twitch, just watched. And then, in a voice that was not a dog's, he said, "You shouldn't have let me out." And then he smiled. I don't know how long I stood there. Seconds, minutes. My brain refused to process what was happening. The dog, if I can even call it that, was sitting in the crate, body still as a corpse, eyes locked onto mine. But it was the smile that made my stomach churn. Dogs don't smile like that. It was too wide, too deliberate, like it had watched humans long enough to mimic us. Its lips curled up, stretching its face in an unnatural way, revealing perfect, human-like teeth. "You shouldn't have let me out." The voice wasn't a bark, wasn't a growl. It wasn't even an animal noise. It was flat, cold, like a radio transmission. I wanted to move, run, slam the door, and pretend I never opened that crate. But my body wouldn't listen. It was like I was trapped in place, sinking into the floor, drowning in that white, pupilless gaze. Then, the dog did something worse. It stood up. Not in the way dogs normally stand. It unfolded. Bones cracked, joints popped, and the sound, God, the sound, was like wet branches snapping in half. It stretched itself out, legs trembling as if unused for years, body shifting in a way that made no biological sense. It was too tall, way too tall for a Labrador. Its legs bent at odd angles, spine arching as if it was adjusting to a new form. And the smell, Jesus, it hit me like a punch to the gut. Rotten meat, burning hair, something metallic like blood. My head spun, my vision blurred. I took a step back, finally breaking eye contact, and that's when it moved. Fast, faster than anything that size should move. 1 second, it was inside the crate. The next, it was standing right in front of me. Its breath was warm, wet, reeking of something dead and long buried. And then, in that same flat, radiostatic voice, it spoke again. "You smell afraid." I lost it. I don't remember making the decision to move. 1 second I was standing in that suffocating hallway, and the next, I was sprinting for my bedroom, slamming the door shut behind me. Heart pounding, hands shaking, my brain screaming. What the fuck was that? I grabbed my phone, fingers barely able to type, and tried to call Alex. No signal, no Wi-Fi, just a single new notification on my phone. I hesitated. Slowly, I clicked it. It was a text, from a number I didn't recognize. There was no contact name, no sender information, just 3 words. "Don't look away." And then, scratching, right outside my door. Slow, gentle, deliberate, like whatever was on the other side wasn't trying to get in. It was playing with me. I pressed my back against the door, trying to breathe, trying to think, trying to understand what the hell I'd just let into my apartment. And then, silence. No scratching, no breathing, nothing. For minutes, I stayed frozen, ears straining, waiting for something to happen. And then, from the other side of the door, I heard it whisper, "You blinked." I don't remember screaming. I don't remember running, but I must have, because the next thing I knew, I was outside, barefoot, panting, standing in the cold night air. The entire apartment complex was dead silent. No lights on, no cars, no people, like the whole world had just stopped existing. I turned back to look at my window, and he was standing there, inside my room, watching me, still smiling. And as I stood there, heart hammering, stomach twisting, brain refusing to process how the fuck it got in there, it lifted a paw and waved. I don't remember running. I don't remember my feet slamming against the pavement, or the way the night air burned my lungs as I sprinted. All I remember is his face in my window. That fucking smile. Too wide, too human, teeth too perfect for something that had crawled out of that rusted crate. And the wave. Like he knew me. Like he'd always known me. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsed onto the sidewalk, gasping, vision swimming. The world around me felt wrong. Not just quiet, empty, no cars, no distant hum of streetlights, not even the usual sounds of the city, the far-off sirens, the occasional honk, the murmur of people existing just out of sight, just silence, like I had slipped into a dead world. Then my phone buzzed. The sound shattered the stillness, making me jolt so hard I nearly dropped it. A new message, no number, no contact name, just, "Where do you think you're going?" I stopped breathing. A second later, another message. "Come back. You left the door open." I turned my phone off, shoved it into my pocket with shaking hands. This isn't real. This isn't happening. It felt like my brain was fracturing, breaking apart under the weight of something I wasn't supposed to understand. Then I heard it. A voice, right behind me, flat, too calm, like a whisper through a speaker. "Are you afraid of being alone?" I spun around so fast, I nearly fell backward. There was no one there, just an empty street, a row of houses, windows dark, no movement, nothing. I was losing it. I had to be. I forced myself to move. Left foot, right foot, don't stop. But the moment I turned the corner, I saw it. My apartment building. I had looped back. I stared, heart pounding, legs locking up. Number? No, that's not possible. I had run blocks away. There was no way I had turned around. No way. But there it was. My window. 3rd floor. And he was still there. Still smiling. Still waving. But now he wasn't alone. A shape stood behind him. Tall. Wrong. Its head too high for the room. Like its neck had been stretched. The arms were too long, hanging past its knees. And its face. God. Its face. It wasn't a face. Just a hole. A black, gaping hole, where the head should have been, stretching wide like it was laughing. I stepped back. Then another. My whole body was screaming, "Run, run, run." Then my phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look, but I did. A photo, taken from inside my apartment. It was my bedroom door, and it was open. Then a message. "You really shouldn't have left the door open." Something moved in my apartment. I saw it from the window, a shadow slipping into the hallway. Then, slowly, the lights in my building started going out, one by one, closer, closer, floor by floor, until only my window was still lit. And the last thing I saw before the light snapped off was him, still smiling, still waving, but now his mouth was moving, and even though I couldn't hear it, I knew. He was saying my name. I didn't go back inside. I couldn't. The moment that last light in my apartment blinked out, my body locked up. Every instinct in me, every survival impulse, screamed that if I stepped back into that building, I wouldn't come out. But I also knew something else. Something worse. That thing in my apartment. It was coming for me. I needed to move. Now I turned and ran. But something was wrong. The street felt wrong. The air was thick, heavy, like moving through water. And the silence. Jesus, the silence. It wasn't just quiet. It was absolute. No wind, no distant city noise, no hum of streetlights, like the whole world was holding its breath. Then my phone buzzed. I didn't want to look. I knew I shouldn't, but I did, and my stomach dropped. A new message. From me. My name was in the sender field, my number, my contact photo, but I never sent it. Why are you running? I stopped. Number. No, 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 no. This wasn't happening. This was a nightmare, a glitch, a hallucination. Then another buzz, another message. I'm right behind you. I spun around. Nothing. Just the street, the dark windows of the buildings. I tried to breathe, think, and that's when I saw it, the reflection, in the glass door of the corner store across the street. Me, standing behind me. But it wasn't me. It was too tall. Its arms were too long. The head was tilted at a sharp, unnatural angle, like a marionette, waiting for its strings to be pulled. And it was smiling. I ran. Didn't look, didn't think, just ran. But the streets, they weren't right. Every corner I turned led me back to my building. Every alley twisted in on itself. I was trapped. And then I saw it, myself, standing at the end of the street, perfect posture, hands at its sides, smiling, watching me. And then, in my own voice, it spoke. You left the door open. I turned to run, but slammed into something solid. A wall. Number. No. There was supposed to be a street here. An exit. I was just here. I turned back. The other me was closer. Too close. I could see its face now. The skin was wrong. Like it had been stretched over something else. Something that didn't quite fit. And the smile. God, the smile. It didn't move like a human face. It was stuck. Pulled too wide, too deep, like the muscles underneath were rotting. You let me out. My own voice. Flat. Empty. And then it blinked. Or at least tried to. The eyelids shuddered, twitched, but didn't fully close. Like they weren't built to. Like whatever was inside was still figuring out how to use my skin. That's when I saw its hands. They weren't hands. Not really. They were longer than mine. The fingers stretched, unnaturally segmented, like the bones inside were too many. And as it took a step closer, I realized it wasn't blinking. It was resetting, like a glitch, like something inside was rewinding the skin. I tried to move, but my body, my real body, wouldn't listen. Then my phone buzzed again. Another message. From me. But this time, it had a video. I stared at the thumbnail, my own face, smiling, too wide. I hesitated. My fingers moved on their own. I pressed play, and the video started. A dark hallway, the camera shaking, breathing, my breathing, fast, shallow. Then a whisper, not mine. Something behind the camera, something using my voice. Come back inside. Then the camera turned, and I saw it, standing at the end of the hall, tall, twisted, wearing my face. And then the screen went black. My phone buzzed. A new message. Just one word. Run. And this time, I did. I ran. I don't remember where my feet carried me. I don't remember the streets I tore through, or the lights I passed that flickered like dying eyes. I only remember that I couldn't stop, because he was still behind me. Or maybe he was ahead, or beside me. I couldn't tell anymore. Every time I turned a corner, I saw him. Me, standing perfectly still, waiting, head tilted, eyes too wide, smiling. I was being herded, like a rat in a maze. And no matter which way I ran, the streets still led me back to the same place. Home. My apartment stood ahead of me, windows dark, silent, waiting. A message buzzed on my phone. I didn't look. I knew what it would say, but I felt it. That low vibration in my hand, the confirmation. It was time. And before I could stop myself, my legs, my traitorous, shaking legs, started walking toward the door. I don't remember opening it. I don't remember stepping inside. But suddenly, I was there, standing in the middle of my apartment, the air thick, the lights dead, and then the smell. Wet fur, blood, rotten meat. My stomach twisted. I could taste it on my tongue. Something old, something that had been waiting in the walls, watching from the dark places I never thought to check. Then a sound, a whisper, behind me. I turned. Too fast, too stupid. And there, in the doorway to my bedroom, was him, the dog, the thing I bought. But he wasn't sitting anymore. He wasn't curled up, waiting. He was standing, stretching, his limbs unfolded like a marionette untangling itself. His spine cracked, shifting as he stretched taller, taller, until his head nearly scraped the ceiling, and those white, pupilless eyes locked onto mine. Then he spoke, but this time the voice wasn't flat, wasn't empty. It was mine. You came back. I tried to speak, tried to force words through my dry, shaking throat. Nothing came out. He took a step closer. His nails, too long, too sharp, clicked against the floor. Do you know what you let out? I shook my head. I didn't want to answer, but he kept speaking, his head tilted, bones creaking, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. It's wearing you now. My stomach dropped. Number? No. I turned to the mirror hanging by the door. I had to check, had to see. And when I looked, I saw me, but not me. My skin was wrong, slightly off color, stretched just a little too tightly over my bones, my mouth too wide, too sharp, and my eyes. God, my eyes. They were white, empty, just like his. And then I blinked, but not me, not the real me, the thing inside my skin. And I felt it. I felt it move, like a parasite shifting beneath my flesh. I stumbled back, slamming against the wall, trying to shake it out, claw it out. But it was already inside, already settled, and in the mirror, my reflection smiled. Then my phone buzzed. I looked down. A new message. From me. Just 2 words. Look behind you. I didn't want to, but my body, it moved on its own, and when I turned, I saw him, the dog, still watching, still waiting. And then in my voice, he whispered, I'm sorry. Before the lights went out,